I remember sitting in the car a little longer than usual. Not for a reason, just one of those pauses. Engine off, window cracked. The air felt stale, like it had been sitting there all day. I think there was dust on the dash. Might have been crumbs in the cup holder. I noticed those things, because nothing else was happening yet. I hadn't planned to stop there. The place was on the way. That was it. I was dressed the way I am when I don't expect to be seen. Old jacket, faded shirt, shoes that have walked through more parking lots than I could count. Nothing deliberate, nothing careless either. Just familiar. When I opened the door, the sound of it closing felt louder than it should have been. That always sticks with me. How sound changes when you step into a different kind of space. Inside, everything was bright. Too clean. Floors that reflect you back whether you want them to or not. There was a smell, something sharp, maybe cleaner, maybe new upholstery. Hard to tell. I stood there for a second, letting my eyes adjust. People were talking. Then they weren't. Not all at once. Just enough that you notice it in your body before your mind catches up. It wasn't hostile. That's the strange part. It rarely is. It was more like a recalculation, like I'd walked into the wrong equation. I remember thinking I'd give it a moment. Someone would say hello. Someone always does. So I wondered a bit, read the little cards in the windows, ran my fingers along the edge of a door handle. Cold metal. Clean. Untouched. Or maybe too touched. Hard to say. No one came over. That's when the feelings settled in. Not anger, not embarrassment, something quieter. A sense of being placed somewhere without being told. Like a box you don't remember stepping into. I wasn't upset yet. I don't think I even knew what I was feeling. I just remember thinking this is going to be one of those moments, the kind that looks small from the outside, the kind you don't realize stays with you until much later, when you're sitting somewhere quiet, trying to remember why it mattered at all. After a while, you start to feel time differently. Standing there, minutes stretch, sounds repeat, a keyboard clicking somewhere, shoes moving across tile, someone laughing a little too loud and then stopping. I kept my hands in my pockets, took them out, put them back. Small adjustments. Nothing to do with nerves, just something to do. I noticed how people looked at me when they thought I wasn't looking. Quick checks. Not curious, careful. Like they were trying to place me in a category that wasn't on the list in their heads. I've felt that before. Most people have. I think it's subtle, but it's clear. When the manager finally walked over, she didn't slow down. Didn't smile first. No introduction. No name. She stood a little too far away, like distance might solve something. The first thing she asked was what I was doing there. Not what I was looking for. Not if I needed help. Just that. Flat. Almost tired. I told her I was interested in one of the cars. I pointed, casually. Didn't make a big thing of it. She followed my hand with her eyes, then looked back at me. Took a second longer than necessary. That pause said more than anything she could have asked. She said the showroom was for serious customers. I asked her what she meant by that. I remember my voice sounding calm, maybe even lighter than I felt. She didn't answer right away, just shifted her weight, looked past me, then back again. It was clear she wasn't going to explain it, clear she didn't think she had to. That's when the air changed. Not sharply, just enough, like something tightening. She stepped away without saying much else. I watched her walk toward the offices, the way people do when they think a problem will solve itself if they bring someone else into it. I stayed where I was. Didn't follow, didn't move toward the exit either. I wanted to see what would happen next. Security arrived a moment later. 2 of them. Big guys. Calm voices. The kind of calm that comes from practice. They told me there had been a complaint. Didn't say from who. Said my presence was making someone uncomfortable. That word. Uncomfortable. I asked who I'd bothered. No answer. I asked if I'd broken a rule. Nothing there either. just a suggestion that it might be better if I left. The manager stood a few steps back the whole time, arms crossed, watching, not angry, not embarrassed, just certain. Certain she'd made the right call. And standing there, surrounded by clean floors and quiet voices, I realized I wasn't being asked to leave because of anything I'd done. I was being asked to leave because of how I looked standing still. I stood there for a moment longer than anyone expected me to. You can feel when people are waiting for you to comply. There's a rhythm to it. A kind of social gravity that pulls you toward the door without anyone having to touch you. I felt it. I just didn't move. One of the security guys cleared his throat. Not aggressively, almost apologetic. He repeated that it would be better if I stepped outside. I asked him why. He hesitated, looked past me, like the answer might be written somewhere else. Then he said it again, that there'd been a complaint. I asked what the complaint was. That's when the room went quiet in a different way. Not the polite quiet from before. This was heavier. Like everyone realized something had been said out loud that couldn't be pulled back. No one answered. The manager shifted where she stood. Still didn't uncross her arms. I remember taking a breath, slow, not to calm myself down, just to make sure I said what I meant. I told her this was how people disappear in public spaces. Not dramatically, not with shouting, just by being quietly decided against. I said calling security on someone because they don't fit an image isn't safety, it's judgment, and it lands harder than people think. She tried to respond. I could see it forming. A justification, policy, experience, something about protecting the business. The words came out uneven, defensive. They didn't connect to anything I'd said. They never really do in moments like that, because once the assumption is named, it doesn't have much room to hide. I didn't raise my voice. That part mattered to me. I wanted it clear. I wasn't there to win anything. I just wanted the moment to exist, honestly, without everyone pretending it was normal. Without pretending I was the problem, standing in the middle of the floor. People were watching openly now. No more pretending to look busy. A few faces looked uncomfortable. One person looked embarrassed. Someone else looked annoyed, like I'd made things inconvenient. That one always surprises me, even though it shouldn't. I told her she could ask me to leave if she wanted. That was her right, but she should at least be honest about why. About what she thought she saw when she looked at me. She didn't answer that. Just nodded once, stiffly. So I left. Not because I felt defeated, and not because I was finished speaking. I left because the conversation had reached its limit. Anything more would have turned into noise. And noise has a way of helping people forget what actually happened. As I walked out, the door closed behind me with that same loud sound. It echoed longer this time. I remember thinking how strange it is that a place can feel so controlled inside, and yet the moment you step out, the air just moves again. I didn't think about it right away. That surprised me. Usually things like that sit heavy. This one didn't, at least not at first. It showed up later, in pieces, while doing something else. Waiting for a light to change. Standing in line somewhere. Little flashes of the manager's face. The word she used. The way no one corrected it. When the ownership paperwork finally settled, I asked for a meeting. Not a big one. No conference table. Just the manager and me, sitting across from each other in a smaller office. The kind with framed certificates on the wall and chairs that don't quite match. She looked nervous when she came in. Not guilty. Not defensive. Just unsure which version of herself she was supposed to be. I didn't start with titles or roles. I didn't mention authority. I told her where I'd been standing that day, which car I was looking at, how long I waited before anyone spoke to me. I described the moment she decided I didn't belong, because that's what it was, a decision. I told her how it feels when someone makes that call without checking if they're right. She tried to explain at first. Old habits, past experiences, safety concerns. I let her talk. Then I asked her one simple thing. what exactly she saw that made her call security. She went quiet, really quiet. That answer didn't exist in a way that could survive being spoken. I told her I wasn't interested in punishment. I wasn't there to humiliate anyone. But I wasn't going to let the moment disappear either. Places like that run on patterns. If you don't interrupt them, they just keep repeating, using different people each time. So we changed the patterns. Training was updated. Clear expectations. Everyone gets greeted. No one gets assessed from a distance. Security only gets called for actions, not impressions. And when someone makes a call like that, it gets reviewed. Not to shame them, just to make sure it doesn't happen quietly again. I didn't raise my voice once. I didn't need to. The room understood what was happening, not because of who I was, but because the moment had been named out loud. Clearly, when the meeting ended, she thanked me. Not the polite kind, the kind that comes from realizing you were wrong and having to sit with it. I nodded and left. No resolution, no closure. Just a change set in motion, which is sometimes the most you get. I went back a few weeks later. Not announced, just walked in the same way I had before. Same kind of clothes, same posture. I wanted to see what would happen when no one thought they were being tested. It felt different right away. Not perfect, just different. Someone looked up and said hello. Not loudly, not carefully, just normal. Another person asked if I wanted coffee and then forgot about it halfway through asking, which made me smile more than the coffee would have. The place sounded alive in a way it hadn't before, less controlled, less guarded. I watched people for a bit. A man in worn jeans and work boots walked in after me. No hesitation this time. He was greeted, asked what he needed, given space without being ignored. I don't think anyone realized why that mattered to me. And that was kind of the point. I didn't stay long. I never do. I stepped back outside and sat in the car again, same spot as before. Different feeling. Not lighter, just steadier. Like something had been adjusted a few degrees in the right direction. What stays with me isn't the confrontation. It's how easy it all was. How quickly a judgment turned into a process. How official it felt once it had uniforms and procedures around it. And how small the interruption needed to be to change it. I think about how many people don't get to interrupt the moment. How many just leave. How many carry that quiet weight with them and never get the chance to put it back down. That thought doesn't settle neatly. It just sits there. I finished my coffee. It had gone cold. I didn't mind. I watched people come and go through the glass. Same building, same doors. But something inside had shifted. Not fixed, not resolved. Just noticed. And sometimes noticing is the first real thing that happens.